Okay, this is the video to tell you how to do databases. I'm going to do it in Access 2010, so if you're using the previous version, then you might want to have a look on YouTube instead. If you're using a later version, they're pretty much the same, so I wouldn't worry. Okay, so have a pause and read through the task. Okay, and I'm also going to show you some more useful information here, which is about how Access deals with objects, and each object is for a different purpose. So have a read through this and I'll show you how it works in the upcoming video. Right, so going back to the tasks, use the houses data to make a new database. So you would have been given a folder with some files in that looks like this. The databases task, the objects you've seen, just deleting that because I don't need it. And there's a text document with a load of data in it. Okay, now the way to get that into Access is to open Access first. There it is. And there's two ways to get it. You can either open it or you can get external data. What I prefer to do is open it. So it'll then be a matter of finding it. So mine happens to be in the desktop. And I'm just going to look for all files, and there it is, you can see it. This should bring up the import box. Well, I'll just make a few decisions to make sure it imports correctly. Now if you remember what that text file looked like, it had loads of commas everywhere, as you can see. So when you're asked which of these descriptions works, characters such as commas, yeah, separate each field. So that's the one we want. Next, you see they only asked you one question there. Here they ask you several questions. Choose the delimiter. We've already said it's comma. So that's the first question. The next question is here. First row contains field names. Now, probably 3/4 of my learners, just their eyes don't seem to detect this, and they skip past it and they're desperate to click on next. Look at the first row. There it is. Does it contain field names? Yes. So you blatantly want to tick that. Okay. The third one, the text qualifier, don't make any difference. So none is what I leave it on. Okay, we've now answered all three of the questions, so next. Okay, now it wants to know what data type each of these fields is. So text, text, and it's detected long integer here, which is fine. Integer means whole number, and these are always whole numbers with this set of data, so that's alright. These are whole numbers too, but we can be a bit more specific than that, I think you'll hope. Now, I hope you've decided currency is what you want there. Text would work. I would prefer to use yes, no, just to be a little bit more tight about the types of information that you're going to allow. Date and time, yeah. Generally with databases, they are a bit more stringent about what you're allowed to put in, which is good because it means you can rely on what the data is going to consist of and how it's going to be written. Okay, contact number. It's detected text, which is thankful. A lot of you might be tempted to put number here, or well, which would be integer, but it won't work. It'll lose the 0 at the start, you'll lose the space. There's no point in setting something as number unless you're going to possibly do some kind of maths with it or look at how big it is. None of those terms are really appropriate when you're talking about phone numbers, so it's got to be text. Similarly, if you've got membership numbers with noughts at the front or ISBN numbers with noughts at the front, they have to be text, otherwise those noughts are going to disappear. So that's another place where errors can creep in. The first one was first row contains field names. The second one is that's got to be text. Okay, moving on. Call it something sensible. Thankfully, it's already going to, so I'm happy with that. It's a table of houses, so I'll finish. And then in a little moment, it'll have created a table, hopefully, with all the data from those houses in an easier to use format than what it was when it was in that horrible text file. Let's finish linking the table. Okay. So if you look across here, You did hopefully read that thing about objects earlier. So it's created an object, which is this table of houses. I double click on it and it will appear. Now you're probably thinking, well, it looks the same as Excel, and to be honest it does. This view is very similar to Excel. I'll show you about switching between views. You just right click on the tab. Data sheet just basically is a spreadsheet type view. Design view shows you what these data types are set as. And they'll often ask to see that so they can be sure that you've chosen the correct data types. So I'm just going to save my database now because I'm happy with it. Now it likes to close all those little mini objects like tables and stuff before saving the database, which is absolutely ideal. Just going to go for houses. Yep. Because you can do so much slick stuff in Access, it always asks you whether you want to enable content. If you made it, then you can be pretty safe. It's not going to do anything weird. Generally, I always click on that enable content. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. Unless it's something I've downloaded from somewhere odd, but then I don't tend to do that anyway, really. Okay, so we've got our table. What's the next step? I'm using Alt and Tab to switch back to my document, but you could use your mouse if you want. Okay, make the database, save it. I didn't bother putting my initials in. Doesn't really matter whether you do or not. Make sure all data types are appropriate. We've done that. Remember that phone number was text. Write a query that shows all 3-bedroomed houses with gas and mains water costing up to 170 grand. Okay, so queries. These are where you narrow down the records that you can see. And here they've given us actually 4 criteria they want to narrow it down by. The number of bedrooms, the fact that they have gas, the fact that they have mains water, and that we only want them to cost up to 170 grand. So, I'll show you doing a query now. It's going to be a new object. So, looking across these tabs, create is how you make new objects, not surprisingly. I tend to use the wizard, but if you want to use design, that's fine. So, the simpler the better, isn't it? We're not really doing anything expert at this stage. So, OK that. Which fields do you want in your query? I mean, to be honest, I'll be happy if my query is just the same as this, but with fewer rows or fewer records. So I'm just going to add all the fields. No reason why not. And then, would you like a detail or summary query? Don't really know, just leave it as it is. Don't really know, leave it as it is. Unless you've got a strong reason for changing the default setting, then just leave it as it is and see what happens. It's a pretty good rule of thumb in my opinion. So here's our houses query. You'll see it looks exactly the same as our houses table. So how do we narrow things down? Well, you need to go into design view. So you right click on the object, pick design view, and this is what design view of a query looks like. You've got the fields going across here. You've got the table they've come from. If you wanted to sort by one of these fields, it's as easy as that. Show is whether they're going to be shown in that datasheet view. And criteria is where you put in those criteria like that were mentioned in the question. So the question said 3-bedroomed houses. So let's just change that to 3. And then if you swap back to the datasheet view, with any now it will just show, as you can see, the 3-bedroomed houses. People don't tend to have any trouble with putting 3 in the correct field there. Some other ways are more difficult. So gas and mains water, sometimes people will put yes like this because they're used to putting things in speech marks if they're words. So if I switch back to datasheet view, it has a grumble. That's because these speech marks always mean text. This isn't text, it's yes, no. So just look at what happens. So get rid of those, and then try and switch back to the other view. Now it worked. It just shows the ones with mains gas. Now it asks you to do the same for water. And the other thing they asked for was price of up to 170 grand. Now this would be less than 170 grand, but up to, I think I would understand that as meaning including 170 grand. So instead of doing just less than, we do less than or equal to 170 grand like that. Now when we switch back, hopefully it'll work. A lot of people put the greater than instead of the less than. It's not really an issue because you'd be able to see that if these were all greater than 170 and then say, oh right, I must have put that symbol the wrong way around. I'll pop back to design view, go in there and just switch the symbol the other way around. The reason you're doing one at a time is if you do make a little mess up like that, you know which one you did wrong because it shows the wrong thing in datasheet view. So you're like, oh okay, if you did something wrong with the bedrooms first up, you'd have seen it. So you'd only had one to worry about. So it's a really good idea. Just do one criterion at a time and then just flick back between datasheet view and design view just to check it works. If you try and do all four and then it messes up, you don't know which one it is that messed it up. So that's a pretty good idea to do it like that. So put our four criteria in and we're happy. I'm just going to add one note because I did see it in an assessment recently. Let's say you thought, alright, so 3-bedroom house is alright up to 170 grand, but actually I wouldn't mind paying a bit extra if it was a 4-bedroom house, maybe up to 230 grand. Still want these. So now you're saying, oh, I must have these criteria on this row, or it could have these criteria on this row. So now you should have more records in this query with some 3 beds and some 4 beds if it's worked. See? So they might ask you to do that, and in which case you'll put a set of criteria on each row. This question didn't, so I'm just going to undo that. So you can see you can do some really detailed searches through data with queries, and we've just touched the tip of the iceberg really. You can do, uni courses on all this stuff if you get really into it, or not, as the case may be. Right, so I've done my query, it's narrowed it down to the ones I want. So I think I'm just going to close this query, just tidy it away. Do you want to save the design? Yeah, because it worked. Again, I'm going to close this houses table. It's not the same as closing the whole database. You see it's still houses database. I'm just tidying them away basically. Right, now I'm going to use Alt and Tab to switch back to my tasks. Done. Now we're on number 5. Print a report showing such and such for these houses. So it says for these houses, as in the ones you've just narrowed down with your query. It's really important to note, table for organising your data, query to narrow it down. They might not even ask you to do a query. They might say print a report showing the houses that are up to 170 grand. And you say, hold on, I'm narrowing it down because they're only up to 170 grand. If you're narrowing it down, you have to do a query, even if they don't say the word query in the question. But this question happened to say it, but just be aware that they might not, and that's a massive banana skin, so be aware of that. Okay, now we're going to print a report showing that lot of stuff for the houses from the query. This isn't hard. So we want to make a new thing. It's a report. Create report. I like to use the wizard. And then when the box comes up, it's going to say, what do you want to base it on? Tables or queries? So it might default to say the table of houses. Well, it would be stupid to leave it as that, because what would be the point in narrowing it down with that beautiful query? So make sure you choose the query to base it on. So you've just got that subset of all those records of houses. And I think it said it wanted area. Oh, I can't remember. I'm going to flick back. Area type, bedrooms, garden area, contact number. Area type, bedrooms, garden area, contact number. I'm going to give them in the order they asked for. And price. See, they don't ask for gas and mains water. Because what would be the point? It'd just be a load of yeses anyway. Because we have only included the ones with gas and mains water. Right, so it says show such and such. So those are the ones that we're going to display. Next step. Computer's on a bit of a go slow today. Not helpful. Do you want to add any grouping levels? Well, they haven't asked for some, so don't bother. Didn't ask for an order. I think I always prefer to do an order, but don't matter if you don't. You won't lose any marks. How'd you like to lay out your report? I tend to just leave it as tabular. It seems to be fine. Orientation is a key part. Portrait often looks a bit rubbish because you struggle to fit all the fields in. So what I've learned from experience is landscape's a bit better than portrait, but if you forget that, it's not a huge issue. Next, do you want to preview the report or modify its design? Just again leave as it is, see what happens. And report specifically for printing, so it tends to display it much more nicely, so it would print effectively basically. So when it eventually comes up with the report, it should be the kind of thing that you'd be happy to pass to, your management or whoever might be asking for it. One thing that you do tend to find with reports is that they can look a bit dodgy because sometimes the fields, which we would think of as column headings from Excel, but the field names might squish into each other a bit. So the next thing I'm going to show you is just how to change the layout so you don't have problems like this bedrooms and garden area being squished. So here's what we do. You can't do it in this view. This is just a print preview, as you can see. So you choose a different view. No prizes for guessing. Layout view is probably the best one for it. So you can change these things on their own separately. I'm just going to undo that. But you're better off choosing that. Hold down Control. Choose that as well. And then you can do them all at once. Hold down Control. Squish that over. Squish that over. Control to do both bits. Pop that across a bit. Pop that across a bit. It's pretty lame really that Access has gone through so many kind of iterations of improvement over the years, and yet this thing still doesn't work nicely automatically. Sort it out, Bill Gates. Anyway, are they all fitting? Oh, whoops. No, this page footer is just squeezing off the end. Right. Now we're looking a lot better, I hope. So pop back to the report view. Now we're talking. Okay. Now we're at a stage where I would be happy to print that personally. So, as you're used to, file, print. Send it to your printer. Job done. If you're doing it and sending it back via email, try doing something like using the XPS document writer or print to file or something. Then you'll be able to email it easily to your tutor. Stick mine in there. Obviously, you're in your test, you just print it normally. Right, so that is a databases question. So, importing the data into a table, narrowing it down with a query, printing out with a report. Job done. Hope this was helpful. See ya.